Hey Bookish Babes, and welcome to my book nook. For those that are new here, my name is Rainey Barton. I'm an elementary music teacher and middle school musical theater teacher, could not remember, during the day, and booktuber by night. So if you're interested in learning or talking all about different types of books, because I love to read different genres of books, then definitely subscribe to this channel, and we have new videos on Sundays and Wednesdays, and occasionally Fridays, because I'm just crazy like that. Anyway, in today's video, we are going to be doing Try a Chapter Thriller Edition. So I've loved getting to see other Try a Chapter videos. If you don't know what those are, it's where typically you will read the first chapter in like different books, typically within the same genre, just so that you have something to compare them by, because if you choose like all different sorts of like genres, that can be really hard to like distinguish like what you really enjoyed compared to what you didn't in the specific genre. And so I have chosen 7 books that I'm going to be reading the first chapter in for this. They are 7 books that I have on my shelf that are thrillers that I've really been wanting to read and just haven't made time for yet. And so hopefully this will incentivize me getting to them sooner than later, because I'm going to be really intrigued by the first chapter, I hope. And so I'm going to share the 7 books that I have chosen. I'm going to tell you what each one is about. And then I am just going to get about and tell you my thoughts on them. And I'm going to rate them from 1 to 5. 1 being, this is garbage. I probably should unhaul this book. I don't think it's going to be good. And 5 being, I can already tell this is probably going to be a 5-star read, or it started off really well and I know I'm going to rate it high. And so that's how I'm going to do it. So 1 is like dumpster fire. 5 is like pure gold. So that's a pretty good scale, I would think. So let's talk about the 7 books that I'm going to read the first chapter of and give you my feedback in real time as I film them all right now. The 7 books that I'm going to be reading, which I will give you a breakdown on each one of them in just a minute, is The Girl in 6E by A.R. Tourette, Pretty Girls by Karen Slaughter, They Never Learn by Lane Fargo, The Cabin at the End of the World by Paul Tremblay, Little Secrets by Jennifer Hillier, His and Hers by Alice Feeney, and Lock Every Door by Riley Sager. Okay, now we're going to talk about each one of these books and why I chose it. So Lock Every Door, I definitely chose because I've never read a Riley Sager book. I currently have 4 out of 5 of his. I want to do a reading vlog on him soon. I haven't gotten to any of his yet, and I've heard that everyone really loves this one the most, which is why I chose it. And it says in this one, no visitors, no nights spent away from the apartment, no disturbing the other residents, all of whom are rich or famous or both. Those are the only rules for Jules Larson's new job as an apartment sitter at the Bartholomew, one of Manhattan's most glamorous and secretive buildings. Recently heartbroken and just plain broke, she's captivated by the splendor of her surroundings and accepts the terms, ready to leave her past behind. As she gets to know the residents and staff, she finds herself drawn to fellow apartment sitter Ingrid, who reminds her of her sister who vanished 8 years ago. When she confides that the Bartholomew is not what it seems and that the dark history hidden is starting to frighten her, Jules brushes it off as a harmless ghost story until the next day when Ingrid disappears. Searching for the truth about her disappearance, she digs deeper into the Bartholomew's sordid past and the mysteries kept within its walls. What she discovers pits her against the clock as she races to unmask a killer, expose the building's hidden secrets, and escape a dream apartment that is quickly turned into a nightmare. That sounds really intriguing. I'm very excited to read it. The first chapter is 12 pages, so not too bad. We will read this in just a second, but let me give you updates on all the other books we're reading as well. Then we have Alice Feeney's His and Hers. I've read Rock, Paper, Scissors by Alice Feeney and absolutely loved it, and I know that's a very like polarizing book. People either loved it or hated it. I happen to love it, so I'm really excited to read other books by her. This one says, Anna Andrews will do almost anything for her career as a BBC news anchor. When she's asked to report on a woman's murder in Blackdown, the sleepy countryside village where she grew up, it becomes clear she's not just covering the story, she's at the heart of it. Detective Chief Inspector Jack Harper is suspicious of her involvement in the case. He knows she knew the victim, but he hasn't told anyone that he knew her too, and he soon realizes he's a suspect in his own murder investigation. Someone knows more than they're letting on, someone isn't telling the truth, and it alternates between their points of views. It's a highly addictive, fast-paced thriller with a killer twist that'll keep readers guessing until the very end. That sounds super awesome. I can't wait to read the different perspectives. I definitely love books that do that, so I'm sure this is going to be fabulous. And this book, the first chapter, is only 10 pages long. We can definitely make it through that super quick. Then we have Little Secrets by Jennifer Hillier, and I've never actually read a Jennifer Hillier book. I do have her latest arc, Things We Do in the Dark, and I potentially thought about picking that for this, but I figured I'd pick this because this is the first book that I picked up, and it's the only book that I've really heard my friends like rant and rave about. She did also write Jar of Hearts, and I've heard some not so great things about that, so I figured we'd start off with this one. Which it says this one is Marin had the perfect life. Married to her college sweetheart, she owns a chain of upscale hair salons, and Derek runs his own company. They're admired in their community and are a loving family until their world falls apart the day their son Sebastian is taken. A year later, Marin is a shadow of herself. The FBI search has gone cold, the publicity has faded, she and her husband rarely speak. She hires a private eye to pick up where the police left off, but instead of finding Sebastian, she learns Derek is having an affair with a younger woman. This discovery sparks her back to life. She's lost her son, she's not about to lose her husband too. Derek's mistress, Kenzie Lee, is an enemy with a face, which means this is a problem Marin can fix permanently. That sounds quite riveting, I must say. The jealous wife. Whatever will they do? I do not know. But chapter 1 is officially 10 pages long. Let's do this. Then we have The Cabin at the End of the World by Paul Tremblay, which is Katie Coulson, one of her favorite books, and I love Katie Coulson. The reason I chose this, though, because my mom and my aunt both read this at the same time when they were going on a trip somewhere, and they hated this book. My mom hated it so much, she writes books. Now, she put it on her stand at one point, and every day she would look at it and go, if this book can get published, I can surely get published, because this book is trash. So, there are some heated opinions on this from my family. So when my mom saw this on my shelf, she said, oh, good, it's for Kindling. So, of course, by that, I'm very intrigued. Why did she hate this book so much? Lord, if I know, maybe I'll figure it out through the first chapter. What it says is about 7-year-old Gwen and her parents, Eric and Andrew, are vacationing at a remote cabin in New Hampshire, a handful of miles from the Canadian border, far removed from the bustle of city life, cut off from the urgent hum of cell phones and from the internet. They're more than 2 miles away from their closest neighbors. On a summer day, as Gwen catches grasshoppers in the front yard, a stranger appears. Leonard is the largest man she's ever seen, but he's young and friendly, with a warm smile that wins her over almost instantly. They continue to talk and play until 3 more strangers come down the road carrying strange, menacing objects. In a panic, Gwen tells Leonard she must go back inside the cabin, but before she goes, he tells her, none of what's going to happen is your fault. You haven't done anything wrong, but the 3 of you will have to make some tough decisions. I wish with all my broken heart you didn't have to. As Gwen sprints away to warn her parents, he calls out, your dads don't want to let us in, Gwen, but they have to. We need your help to save the world, please. How vague could that be? I don't know. I feel like it could be more vague, you know? Anyway, so we have how many pages? I do not know. Oh, this first chapter is very long. Oh, dear God. Maybe it's 26 pages. That's the longest one by 4. Okay. Then we have They Never Learn by Lane Fargo. I have been wanting to read this for a hot minute. Honestly, that's why I picked it, because everybody says amazing things about this. I haven't heard one bad review, so that's why it's on here. It says, Scarlett Clark's an exceptional English professor, but she's even better at getting away with murder. Every year, she searches for the worst man at Gorman University and plots his demise. Thanks to her planning, she's avoided drawing attention to herself, but as she's preparing for her biggest kill yet, the school starts probing into the body count on campus. Determined to keep her enemies close, she insinuates herself into the investigation. Everything's going according to plan until she loses control with her latest victim. Meanwhile, Gorman student Carly Schiller is trying to survive her freshman year. She wants to fade into the background. Her roommate, Allison Hadley, is cool and confident, and they form an intense friendship. So when Allison's assaulted at a party, she becomes obsessed with making the attacker pay and turning her fantasies about revenge into a reality. And then I'm sure they're going to be interweaved in some form or another. I'm very excited about this book. But it is only 6 pages long, so it doesn't give me a lot to work with on this scale. We have Pretty Girls by Karen Slaughter. I've been wanting to read this forever. I always wanted to read a Karen Slaughter book. I've heard this book is fantastic, but also extremely trigger warning full, and it's almost 600 pages. I can't imagine why. But it says, it's been more than 20 years since Claire and Lydia last spoke. Claire is the glamorous trophy wife of an Atlanta millionaire. Lydia is a single mother dating an ex-con, struggling to make ends meet. Neither has recovered from the disappearance of their sister Julia 2 decades earlier, and the shocking murder of Claire's husband brings the horror and heartbreak of the past roaring back into their lives. The vanishing of a teenage girl and the killing of a middle-aged man almost a quarter century apart, what could connect them? As they form a weary truce, the surviving sisters unearth the secret from all those years ago, and they find out that it's someone they could never have expected. Intriguing. Delightful. I don't like that it's a mass market paperback. I hate mass market, but we can work with it for 1 chapter. That is only 5 pages. Well, that's not even the first chapter. So do I read the first chapter along with this little prologue-y thing, or do I just call it at that? Because then it means I'm reading 23 pages instead of 5. Let's see how the first 5 go, and then I'll decide. Last one is The Girl in 6E by A.R. Tourette. I don't know much about it, and it doesn't explain much on here. I know that it is about a girl who follows 3 rules: not leaving the apartment, never letting anyone in, and don't kill anyone. And so I think like she's a serial killer or something, but she knows that she's a serial killer. So in order to stop herself, she never leaves her apartment, but I'm assuming that she has to leave her apartment or something happens. But honestly, there's not much description on here. So that's really all we have to go with. And chapter 1 is 14 pages long, hot diggy dog. All right, we're going to go in the order that I said, and I'm going to read Lock Every Door, and then I'll come back, let you know my thoughts. Okay, so I just finished Lock Every Door, the first chapter. I'm going to say what happens in each of these books, the first chapter, because I don't think that's giving anything away. There was no like plot twist or anything. And it starts with now, and about how this girl wakes up, opens her eyes, realizes she's in the hospital, and then she is like, well, how did I get here? And then it goes back to 6 days earlier. So I guess it's explaining what happened 6 days prior. And so it basically is about this girl named Jewel. Yes, Jules. And how she's extremely broke. She's a college student. She has no money. And she saw this help wanted sign to like be an apartment sitter. But it's at the most popular fancy hotel in all of town, the Bartholomew, which is where all these fancy people live. And she's like, oh, they must have gotten confused. They must think I wanted this apartment. But no, they wanted it to be babysat because, like, when people find out that, like, rooms in the Bartholomew are abandoned, like, people will go and do crazy stuff to it. And so they're going to be paying her $4,000 a month to live there for 3 months. So she's going to get 12 grand. And she's like, well, duh, I'm going to do that. And they're like, okay, let's start the interview process. And that's how the chapter ends. So I would say this probably gets a 4 out of 5 for a first chapter because I definitely am intrigued. I want to know, like, why do you need apartment sitters for this place? It's kind of a weird concept to me. Like, what is like the stipulations around, like, are you going to be able to leave whenever you want? Like, what's the deal here? I'm very much interested in seeing where this goes. So I would definitely give it a 4 out of 5 for keeping my intrigue and making me wonder what's going to happen next. Is she going to get the job? What happens once she gets the job? And all that sort of thing. So I definitely enjoyed it. I am excited to eventually get to this book. But yeah, I would say solid 4 out of 5 stars. On to His and Hers by Alice Feeney. I finished the first chapter, Alice Feeney's His and Hers. And so this one basically was about a girl named Anna Andrews. I believe that she is a news reporter and she was at the bottom of the totem pole. She wasn't really getting to do any like actual news reporting and stuff. And then one of the like head news anchors ends up going on maternity leave and they don't have anybody to like fill in for her, so they let her do it as like a temporary run. And then before you know it, it's 2 years later, she's still out on maternity leave because she had another baby. And so she basically thinks that it's hers and that her contract is about to be renewed for year 3, but then she goes to like this party at the end and she sees all this champagne, and it's the champagne that you normally give to a coworker when they're being like said goodbye to, and then they are welcoming back the news anchor woman, and apparently she came back to take her job back, and so she's going back to the bottom of the totem pole after 2 years of having been a news anchor reporter. And she basically says, as I look at Kat Jones with her perfect hair and perfect children, standing there chatting and laughing with my team, I wish she was dead. And so I'm just wondering if this girl is going to die, or like if she's the murder that is going to happen in this book later on. I'm not really sure. But I would say that there was parts of this chapter that did not really intrigue me. So I'm going to give this 3 stars, 3 out of 5. I think it's a solid 3 out of 5. I definitely still want to read this book. Like, I am still interested in this book, but that first chapter didn't do too much for me. It was just kind of okay. It didn't make me really intrigued to know what happens next, but then it didn't make me absolutely hate the book either. It was just kind of middle of the road for me. I think it's probably setting up a lot of story for what's going to happen, because that was only her chapter. If I had kept going and I had read chapter 2, then I could have gotten his perspective, because it is his and hers and it's going to flop back between the two. So I only got her perspective. But yeah, I think it was still a good chapter. I still think it's interesting. I just don't know if I'm going to want to get to it right this moment, but that's okay. All right, on to the next one in my stack, which is They Never Learn by Lane Fargo. Here we go. Well, I finished 5 stars. I am very intrigued in reading this book. So I'm not going to give away what happens fully in these first 6 pages. So like I said, this is about a serial killer professor. She kills one person every year that she thinks deserves it, like a guy. And so she kills someone in the first chapter. I'm not going to say why though, because so at first it's just explaining how she does it. She's stalking her victim, whatever. And then it gets to the point where they're dying, and she reveals why she killed this person. And when she said why, I was like, oh my God, this is truly a terrible person. Not that they deserve to die, but also they are trash. So I was very intrigued by this. I loved how the first chapter ended. I cannot wait to read more of this. I might have to bump this up like way sooner than I was expecting, because I wanted this book so badly for Christmas, and then I still haven't read it. But like the first chapter was fantastic. I was definitely about this. This is definitely the favorite chapter that I have read so far. And at the end, I will definitely go through and let you know, based off of my ratings, which books I would want to read the soonest. And I have a feeling this one might win unless another chapter tops it, because this was spectacular. Now let's move on to Little Secrets by Jennifer Hillier. I'm excited to dive into this one. Okay, so I may have just said that They Never Learn was my favorite chapter so far, and that definitely was not it. This is a 5-star for this first chapter. And this chapter really scared the shit out of me. So in this one, it's about the girl named Marin, and she's at this, I believe, like downtown area with her son, and she's like, they're in a candy store. And he's like asking her for candy, and she said, not right now. And then her husband texts her asking what she wants from this food truck, and she lets go of his hand for just a second to like type something to her husband. And then when she looks up, he's gone, and she can't find him anywhere. And she starts searching for him crazily, and she's asking like people to help. And then she calls her husband, and he comes back from the food truck, and they're looking for him together. And then they find surveillance footage that shows that he walked out of there within 4 minutes of being gone from her with someone in a Santa suit. And so it just took, and he had a lollipop, which is the type of lollipop that he had been asking for. So you have to wonder who took their kid and how did it happen so fast. And I loved this. And it also was very terrifying because I have a little kid, and I've always been worried like someone would try to take him. And so I never, ever let him have my eyes off of him, because I remember one time my mom said we were at Disney World, and that she happened to let go of me, and I was just walking forward, watching the parade, not paying attention. And my mom and dad start freaking out, and then they look, and I'm like 10 feet up ahead, just walking aimlessly by myself. And I'm only like 4 at the time. And so that freaked the heck out of them. And they were like, we can never let you go. And like, bad things happen when you're not watching your kids in public, especially nowadays in the world. I feel like things are much worse. Kids are much more easily taken. And that honestly terrifies me. So this first chapter made me feel all the things, because I just kept thinking of my little one and how I would be devastated if that was to happen to him. And so yeah, I'm very intrigued seeing where this book goes, and I feel really sad, and I just don't know what's gonna happen. But I loved it. It was 5 out of 5, a perfect first chapter. Can't wait for more. Okay, moving on to The Girl in 6E by A.R. Torre. We have another 5 out of 5. These are knocking out of the park. Like, I am very intrigued in reading the rest of this book, and I love how they basically explain what's going on within the first chapter. And so, like I said, this is about a girl, I believe her name's Deanna, but she goes by the name Jessica, and she's like a sex worker online, and like does all sorts of stuff online for sex, and makes a shit ton of money doing it. But she also lives in her apartment and never leaves her apartment, because her mother, when she was younger, killed her entire family, except for her, because I don't know why. I killed her entire family, and then ended up committing suicide. And so that was like a big thing in the news. And so she's like, while I didn't inherit a lot of things from my mother, I did inherit her homicidal tendencies. I want to murder anybody and everybody that I see. And so that's kind of a problem. And so hence she has her neighbor lock her into her room every night, and she convinced him that it's because she has night terrors or she sleepwalks, and so she's like not safe to be able to go outside. But it's really because she figures she will murder the first person that she sees, and she doesn't want to do that, which that's quite intriguing to me. I am glad to say that I don't have that issue, but I definitely am wondering like what's going to happen. Obviously she's going to get out of this apartment, right? I mean, there's no way that would be the most boring story ever if she didn't leave the apartment. So I can only imagine that it's going to get crazier from here. But I'm definitely intrigued. I really enjoyed the first chapter. I like the way this book is written. I'm ready to see some action. Let's go on to the one that I'm most intrigued to read because my mom and my aunt hated it so much. Time for The Cabin at the End of the World, baby. Okay, so it's obviously the next day because I'm wearing a different shirt and I'm on a different place of the room. I just finished The Cabin at the End of the World, the first chapter, and I would probably give it a 3-star. So it dragged on a lot, and so it builds up the story, like I said. So there's this little girl named Wen playing with grasshoppers out in the yard, and this old man shows up, and his name is Leonard, and they start talking about like her life and his life, but not really so much his life as much hers. He has two gay dads, which gets brought up a lot, and they're just talking about like all different sorts of things, including how like she has this scar on her body, and like it just keeps going, and like they're just talking and becoming friends. And then all of a sudden he's like, 2 more of my friends are coming, and she's like, can I trust these people? And he says yes, but before you go inside to your parents, you guys are going to have to make a difficult choice, but just know that I need your help to save the world. And that's how it ends, on that cliffhanger. And I'm still intrigued. Obviously I'm still intrigued because my mom hated this book so much. I'm just wondering, I mean, I do just want to know what happens. And it's not even that long of a book. It's 272 pages. So maybe I'll pick this one up soon and give this a try. But yeah, it's just a solid 3-star. Like, it was all right. It's not like the most fabulous first chapter I've ever read compared to some of the other ones, but it's okay. So now we're going to get to our final one, Pretty Girls by Karen Slaughter. So I just finished chapter 1, and holy freaking shit, 5 stars. That was intense. So in the back of the book, this is not a giveaway because I already said this when I explained it. It says that Claire's husband dies, but you forget that when you start reading. And the way he died is like, oh my gosh, it was brutally graphic. That is one thing that I know Karen Slaughter is very like known for, is how graphic and detailed her horror is. And I'm a little scared because like the girls, so Haley Hughes, this is one of her favorite books. In fact, this is her favorite book of all time. And she's a favorite booktuber of mine. But she always says this is not for the faint of heart because it's extremely bloody and gory and a lot of trigger warnings. And this was intense. Like, it was intense. But it was insanely good. Like, I absolutely loved this first chapter. I am definitely intrigued in seeing how the rest of this goes. But I cannot continue with this mass market paperback. It is hurting my heart. I have no interest in reading this. It's quite awful. Quite awful. It's quite abysmal. Not a good reading experience whatsoever. But the first chapter was fantastic. I can see why people love Karen Slaughter so much. I'm excited to finally, hopefully, get to a Karen Slaughter book. I'll probably move this up the list exponentially. It was so good. Hello, excuse me standing up in the middle of my space to give this final update, but my chair is in the other room and I'm too lazy to go get it. So I have stacked these according to what order I would want to read these books in. And so let's go from backwards to beginning. So in last place with a 3-star is The Cabin at the End of the World, which my mom would be so happy. It was my least favorite of all the first chapters. Followed by Alice Feeney, His and Hers. It was also a 3-star. It was kind of lackluster, not that exciting, but I did enjoy it more than The Cabin at the End of the World. I feel like this one dragged on a lot. Then we had our 4-star read with Lock Every Door by Riley Sager. This one was interesting. I would probably give it a go. And we had another 4-star, The Girl in 6E by A.R. Torre. I definitely am intrigued in this one still. I do want to see what happens in this one. And then we have my 3 5-star reads, with my lowest one being They Never Learn by Lane Fargo. I definitely was intrigued in seeing where the story continued. I definitely liked it a lot. I also really loved another 5-star one with Little Secrets by Jennifer Hillier. Like I said, I really related to the whole like kid being abducted sort of thing, and that really freaks me out. But the one that has to take the cake is Pure Queen, Miss Karen Slaughter with Pretty Girls. I am most interested in reading that first. And so here is my beautiful stack of Try a Chapter With Me, Thriller Edition. I had a lot of fun with this. I am glad that I read some of these chapters because these are books that I've been wanting to read for forever. And now I'll maybe actually get to them, especially these 3. I definitely want to get these on a TBR within the next like couple months. So definitely be looking out for that. But I think next time I'll either do romance or I'll do fantasy. I'm not really sure yet. But thanks for checking out this Try a Chapter with me. Let me know if you've read any of these books, if you think I should change the order, if there's one that I should read over another one first, all of that sort of stuff. And with that, I'm going to let you guys go, and I'll see you guys in the next video.